So welcome everybody to this training on Dynamics 365. I want to give you a short introduction of what Dynamics 365 actually is and why we built it. Before I start, I actually want a little show of hands. Is that how many of you have been involved in AX7 implementations already? Okay, that's quite a few. That's great. And how many have already looked in Dynamics 365? Okay, so you're all well prepared. That's great. So I'm going to make the theoretic approach as short as possible. So just connecting to what Lutz introduced from a business perspective, what digital transformation means for our customers is to become a more responsive company, to become better in responding to the market challenges, better in transforming their products, better in transforming their services, and better in leveraging the technology. And this is really what Dynamics 365 is targeting. It's on one hand, it's integrating CRM and ERP processes, but it's also building the platform to integrate to things like IoT, to the newest technology. So it is really trying to bring the newest technology to you. And with the new platform of Common Data Service and Power Apps that we have released the first version, we'll have a lot of focus tomorrow. Also a new platform for partners to build real cloud applications that are really multi-tenant. So the digital transformation really turns about engaging the customers, engaging the employees, transforming products, and optimizing the operations, and using IT and using your data to actually enable this transformation and enable this empowerment. So if you look at Dynamics 365, what it is initially, when it was released in this fall, who was actually at AXUG when we officially released it? At the AXUG event? Very, very few. That's where it was originally launched, where we launched our also the fall release. Well, on one hand, it's a new price list. So you sell CRM and AX, the cloud offerings of CRM and AX together. They also have been brought together visually, in a way. So the different offerings we have in the CRM world and in the AX world are brought together in one offering. So we have sales, we have customer service, project automation, field service, and then the famous Dynamics 365 for operations, which used to be called AX or AX7. Other than that, it didn't really change, with the exception of what we are going to present you to you this morning or today, which is specifically focusing on all the functionality we added in the fall release. So between the spring, when we released AX7, and the fall release, we already added, again, a huge set of new functionality, and we're going to show some important parts of that to you today. I guess we can kind of jump over that one. You all know how it's built. It is from an AX7 perspective, from an operations perspective. There hasn't been dramatic changes to how we build it. There have been obviously improvements. What is really new in Dynamics 365, what was new in the fall release, is that we started building the common application platform. And the common application platform consists of Power Apps, of Flow, and of the Common Data Model and / Common Data Service. How many of you actually have tried Power Apps and the Common Data Service so far? Okay, quite a few. So it's really kind of a neat thing. The Common Data Service, something if you sign up for Power Apps, you can actually create your own database in the cloud. And you can actually kind of play with that, kind of import data, can even change the data model there, we're going to have some very good focus sessions tomorrow with Manoj and Christian Wolf on this one. So this platform really is the new thing about Dynamics 365 from a technology perspective, and the integrations we're doing to that is really important. And in the spring release to come, where we will give you a little bit outlook today as well, but we're working on that. You will see even more functionality there. You will see the SDK around the Power Apps mature and being ready to be used for partners. Power BI obviously also a big part of the family. We are currently working on getting more content packs out. I think there were so far only a few available, but we have already a couple of them in the pipeline. Sales was released 2 weeks ago, I think, and we're working on production. We're working on warehouse. I think Mirza is going to talk a lot about it as well. So there's going to be more out of the box content packs for Power BI available. One thing that's also important to recognize is that whatever we release as a real cloud solution, many of you know that from lifecycle services since long years now, or since 2 years almost now. Common data service is the same thing, but also Power BI offerings. We now don't have to wait for a release vehicle to actually release them. So we actually have even shorter release cadences. So as an example, the Common Data Service has been, since it has been launched in October, they had literally a bi-weekly update of that. So it's continuously updated. It's a big change when you step into real cloud solution, because it's deployed in a different way. It's deployed centrally, but it offers you to actually be more agile in that sense as well. So looking a little bit inside that box. So if you look at the Common Data Model and the Common Data Service, that is the foundation of the Dynamics 365 technology. Then there's an important part that's called connectors and gateways. Obviously, to bring the Common Data Service to life, you need to actually bring data in. And that is not only meant that it's only working for cloud solutions. It's obviously also meant that whoever is still working on on-premise solutions, on older versions of AX, on 2012, on 2009, whatever, or on any other solution, can populate the Common Data Model and the Common Data System through connectors and bring the cloud solution to life with that. We're working with a lot of effort on that, providing that, bringing all the connectors for the Microsoft solutions. But obviously, we'll only complete if our partners also start working on bringing connectors for whatever they have sitting outside of the ecosystem, to having an even better integration to that. The interface of the Common Data Service and the Common Data Model to the end user, to a business user, is Power BI, Power Apps, and Microsoft Flow. We are working on releasing an IT Pro experience for all of them, so you have an advanced experience to actually develop advanced integrations, also to develop native Dynamics 365 applications that you can then kind of offer and sell through the App Store, and the same for the BI integration. We have first versions of that available, but this is something that is going to be to evolve very, very strongly towards the spring release. And in the tech conference that has been called for pre-registration yesterday, I think some of you might have gotten it. There will be lots of more details on these areas. And obviously Manoj and Christian will also kind of drill into that tomorrow a little bit. In parallel, we're also working on additional applications that actually use and leverage the common data model natively, and I will make an overview of that tomorrow as well. Okay, that is a first overview of what Dynamics 365 really is, and I think I have the impression that we have all now a good understanding about that. So with that, I'm going to switch over to the next part of our presentation, and Roxana will join me here on stage for that.
No, I did it.
So we want to go into a little bit what is new functionally in manufacturing and planning. In the fall release, so we want to start with the product master data part here. There's an important part that we actually have introduced that's also quite important for the foundation of the common data service in the future. Because basically we had one small open issue or bigger open issue in AX that was the product ID, especially for customers who work with product variants. That is that you couldn't actually configure or define how the structure of your product ID actually looks in AX. There was a fixed structure that was using columns as separators of dimensions, which is a very, very impractical thing. I honestly don't know who had that idea. But it doesn't matter, so we've actually fixed it, and Roxana is going to show you how that looks now.
But before I show you how this works, I would like to start by presenting new ways of using workspaces for product master management. And it's a very quick thing I would like to show. So we have multiple workspaces in Dynamics 365 operations where users can go and pinpoint issues with their master data setup. This is just one example. It's about product readiness for discrete manufacturing. So a user can come to this workspace, and as you can see on the left side, he can see the number of items that are not properly set up for production. In this example, he can see the items that don't have active bombs and routes but have default order type production, or items that have default order type production but within their production lead time their bombs and routes are about to expire. And the cool thing about this workspace is that it also has this release products part with lists, so users can come here and immediately fix the problems. Either in this example, create a route, assign a route version, create a route and route version, and things like these, or create a case. And we would like to encourage partners to keep on building on this model of pinpointing master data setup problems to users via workspaces and other smarter forms like these. And then, make it easier for them to fix their own data instead of calling you and Microsoft support and et cetera, et cetera. So that's all I wanted to say for workspaces and product master data management. On the same note, product master data management, coming back to what Konrad introduced before, the concept of product nomenclature. We're introducing nomenclatures for both product names and product numbers, product IDs. And a nomenclature is basically bringing more intelligence. It's going beyond just a number sequence. A nomenclature is a concatenation of segments, essentially. And a segment can be a free text value, a number, the value of a attribute from the configuration model, the value of a color, the value of the size, the name of a color, name of the size. So it's really, at the end of the day, just string concatenation that allows you to build product names and product numbers that make sense and are easier for people to use. There's two other small things besides this that are new with product master data management. One of them is the ability to search for products when you create a sales order line and a purchase order line. And this is a bit more advanced search than what we used to have. So it's not a begins with. You can type in everything, and we will search cross product name, product number, product dimensions, item numbers, etc. And you'll be getting a lookup, just like in a normal search experience. And the third thing that's new with Product Master Data is that we are out of the box showing the product names on multiple forms. In the old Dynamics AX, we would usually just show the item number, and that was it. So now we are expanding a bit, and you have item number plus product name. So let me very quickly show how this works. So the nomenclature, I'm just going to show the effect of it. I have the item D004 from our standard demo data. It's a configurable product, meaning it has a configuration model attached. And as you can see here in the related variants section, this is the old way of creating product variants numbers. So you had the item number, and then when you are configuring a product, you were not able to create the configuration string. You were just getting this some sort of number sequence. So now the configurator can generate a string, and you can specify what attributes of the configurator you want to add to the configuration string. And then you can build a product number that has the number of the product and then the number of and then the configuration string in it. And it's the example here in the lower part of the list. Yeah, that was the use of nomenclature. I'm just going to very quickly show. So you see now the product name is on the sales order form. And then if I come here and I type in black, I get search results in a lookup. And I can just, do this and this. So it's easier to use. Cool. So that was for Product Master Data.
You don't want to show the setup of the nomenclature? I think it's a pretty
I think
it's a pretty important feature because it prepares you really to go into the common data model in the future. Because what we're going to do is that the unique key in the product data model for the product. We don't have like in the common data model. We will not have a product dimension system anymore. So we will have a unique identifier for the product there, and it's going to be the product ID. And that also means that the customers and partners need to be prepared of actually using that, because so far the majority also of the customizations has always used the item number. I mean, it still works because it's the same number anyway. If you don't use dimensions, you're good. It's the same number anyway. But if you're using dimension, you need to look after this, and you need to make sure that it's actually sorted out somehow. Or we might need to discuss, do we need to have an alternative connector that actually takes something else in? The other part that I want to mention here is that one of the other challenges is that if you really think stock keeping unit, if you think SKU, then if you're using the advanced warehouse management, you might be aware that the SKU is actually not even the product level. It's actually beyond that. It's the combination of product and unit of measure that builds the SKU, which is the GTIN, for instance, or the EAN number. So be aware of that when you build your nomenclature systems at customers as well, and also in your customizations. Make sure that you recognize in 2012 the product model, and not everything is just invent table. That's really very important.
So coming back to the nomenclature, I'm going to start by showing the nomenclature setup on the configuration model. This is a configuration model for the high-end speaker product that I just showed before. You'll notice this use configuration nomenclature field here. It's turned on to yes, and if you click on this pencil, you're opening the nomenclature form. First field shows an example of how the configuration string will look like. And then we have a segments grid with all the segments that can be added to the configuration string. And in the case of product configurator, you can add just number sequences, text constants, and attribute values, obviously. Now, this is the nomenclature for the configuration string. And then what you have to do afterwards, just let me go to product masters and find this product, the high-end speaker. You'll notice that on the product itself, now we have 4 extra fields. First one says use nomenclature for product number, and then use nomenclature for product name. And for this product, I'm using a nomenclature for the product number, and let's see how this nomenclature looks like. It's a very simple nomenclature. First is the product master number, then there is a text constant. It's this hyphen, I think it's called. And then comes the configuration ID, the configuration string. And just for the sake of it, these are the different segments that you can use to build up a nomenclature. Colors ID, color names, configuration names, number sequences, etc. Oh, and here you have also the example of how this will look when it's applied to a product.
You can also set the default on the product dimension
yes.
group. So there's a nomenclature default on that as well. So because that typically is the entry point if you're using dimensions. For every dimension group, you can have a default setting. Then you don't have to specify it by product. But you can.
Yep. So, quick example of this: you have the dimension group color configuration, and you can say use number nomenclature, and then you can specify the nomenclature to generate the product numbers.
Yeah, the question was does the nomenclature change the configuration model? Only in the sense that in the configuration model you can assign a nomenclature to the configuration model, but no functional changes so far.
Moving on, the next part of the presentation is about new things in planning and forecasting. So for master planning, from a user point of view, from user experience point of view, we just built a new fancy form, workspace, with the purpose of getting very quick insights into the outcome of the last master planning batch run, quick overview of the planned orders that are urgent to be firmed or approved, and then possible delays that are caused by planned orders. With Dynamics 365 for operations, we have removed the terminology around futures. So there's no more futures messages and future days and anything like that. Now we call them delays, and the order is delayed to and has a delay date, and it's delayed by a number of days. So it's easier for people that are onboarding Dynamics AX to understand what are you talking about. From the MRP functionality, unfortunately there's nothing dramatically new, but we did enhance the support for planning spare parts, meaning that if an item has on hand but doesn't have direct or indirect demand, it's automatically filtered out by the planning engine. So you don't have to create your own filters when you do a regeneration of the batch run. We did that because it turns out that for some companies, well, for a lot of companies, it improves performance of MRP quite a lot.
It's also true for just parts that you forgot to remove from your inventory, and they're still there, and nobody uses them. There were quite a footprint on performance because just the fact that there was inventory was actually running a good part of the planning functionality, like action messages and anything, which is obviously not needed if you don't have any demand.
Correct. Speaking about the master planning parameters, we may have introduced a few more to the current suite of parameters, but we also introduced in LCS configuration rules that are meant to be run against a production environment or a test environment to point out if the master planning runs are correctly set up from a runtime and performance point of view. This configuration, this LCS rules, they are not applicable only to Dynamics 365. You can also use them on 2012 R3. They are applicable for that as well. And the last new thing in planning and forecasting is the new demand forecasting. It's from a scenario point of view, exactly the same as the tool that we had in 2012 R3. The difference is on a technology level, so it's not using SQL Server Analysis Services anymore. It's based on Azure ML, Cortana Intelligence, so it's easier for partners to extend. It's easier for customers to extend as well and customize. And with the new demand forecasting model implementation, we also got a broader set of forecasting models, and now we have the ability to do a best fit between the forecasting models. Now, before moving on, I'm just going to very quickly show the master planning workspace that I was talking about a few minutes ago. So this is how it looks like. It's very simple. It's called master planning. It has a filter in the top that allows you to select the plan you want to analyze. This card is the interesting thing, because if a batch run is in process, this card is going to show a batch run is in process, and you're not able to click run again. We had some issues in the past where if a batch run was running and then people were starting another batch run, then data would be corrupted, they needed to clean up, and now we're preventing any user from doing that. Then also this card shows a warning sign, an error sign, if the last batch run didn't complete or didn't complete successfully. And if you click history, you can see the errors from the last run. And then we have the planned orders part, where is the list of urgent planned orders to be firmed, and then also the list of planned orders that are delaying sales and delaying forecast and etc. So that was that. And the last thing that's new in planning in Dynamics 365 operations is the ability to have default order settings at a product variant level. So before you could define default order settings only for an item. But now you can define default order settings for the item and site and color and basically all the item's dimensions. And you don't have to define a full SKU. You can define default order settings for partial SKUs. It's a bit similar like trade agreements and item coverage rules, where you don't have to specify all the dimensions when you define a price or a settings on the agreements. On the on the trade agreements. So I'm just going to quickly show how that works. I have a product. It's called M0030. It's a product variant. It has a size and a color. Actually, let me maybe show you how I got to this form first. Oops. So this is my product. You will notice that there's no more default order settings and site-specific order settings, because essentially it's the same thing. And we felt that people are missing the overview when you have to look into different places in two different forms to understand what's your lead times, what's your quantities, etc. So we collapsed these two forms in one form, and it's called default order settings. And when you go to default order settings, now you actually see default order setting rules. So you will always have a very basic rule, the old default order settings. But besides this absolute rule, the defaults, you can have rules that apply to certain sites, certain sizes, certain colors. So you would have a column for each product dimension. There was a question in the back? No, okay. And you can have rules that apply for just one size or one color or one side, etc. Now, these default order setting rules, they have ranks. It's the same concept as for location directives in warehouse management. So the higher the rank, so when you type in a sales order, let's say, in order to identify which are the default order settings for that sales line, we go through the rules, highest rank first, towards the lower rank. When we hit a rule, we're going to use it. If we never hit a rule, then we are defaulting to the safety net, to the absolute order defaults. So coming back to this definition here, I have for sales, I have a super default rule that says, no, let's go to purchase. So for purchase, I have a default rule that says that the multiple quantity when purchasing this item is 5. But I have a rule saying that if the size is 8 and the color is black, then the multiple quantities and maximum quantities basically don't apply. You can use any values when you make a purchase. And then for sales, I have a rule saying that whenever I try to sell something that has size 2, regardless of the site I'm selling from, regardless of the color, then basically I cannot complete the sales. So to kind of prove that it works, I can come here and create oh, this guy is on hold. Let me remove the line to be sure I don't do anything bad. So I'm getting a message when I try to sell any size 2 of this product saying that you cannot complete the sales, it's stopped, and the reason for it being stopped is that it has this particular size. And I mean, from our side, it was a very boring exercise because we had to go through all Dynamics AX, purchase, sales, inventory, projects, transfers, and just update whenever default order settings were used. Now it has to take into account that it's per variant, per dimension. But hopefully we didn't miss anything, and if we did, we're sorry. And I think that that concludes my part of the demo.
Yeah, thank you, Roxana.
Not a problem.
Yeah, I think this...
Thank you.
The work we've been done on the product variants is pretty important because obviously we have 2 areas where we really grow a lot. I mean, if we just think of we're growing a lot in retail right now, and especially like everything that addresses retail in fashion is heavily constrained with that. The other part, from the manufacturing perspective, everybody who uses configuration has the same problem as well. That you haven't been able to stop a specific configuration so far. Now you can, and I think that is really there was quite some work to be done to actually make that happen. Let's go a little bit deeper into the manufacturing part. I want to re-emphasize a functionality that we introduced with AX7 because we're still working on improving that and making it even better. And this is why I want to really kind of point to that. I cannot. I have to delete this line again. No, that was the remove. Okay, now I can hopefully go back to my menu. So I want to go into the production flow management. This is the workspace for production flow management. So the shop floor manager has an overview of the jobs that are actually supposed to work in his area. So he has the list of jobs in the sequence of how they're scheduled. He can kind of move them up in the sequence down in RP, can toggle the priority, which brings them to top typically, and also do a reassignment of resources here on the fly. But the other process I really want to point to is the production orders release. And it actually goes back to the introduction of R3. When we introduced R3, we actually extended the model from the reservation model, because you're probably all aware that with R3, if you want to create warehouse work, you need to enforce to use reservation. It wasn't there before, but with R3, you're forced to use reservation. Now, the question comes, when do you reserve? And we, from the production side, we said, well, the obvious place to reserve, or the obvious point in time, is when you release the production order. That is when, kind of in the morning, the shift manager looks at the production orders he has to release, and now he's actually, and that's the important part, now he needs to check which production orders can actually be done, and which production orders that are scheduled for the day cannot be done because the material will definitely not be there. And that is the right time to actually release. I mean, obviously, in a well-working supply chain, that shouldn't be the case. But the experience we had with working with a lot of lean customers in the last 5 years was that even in advanced and mature lean organizations, one of the biggest problems keeps being material not showing up when it's needed. So this is why this is such a key process in manufacturing, to be able to decide what is the right thing to do. And unfortunately, what we did not fix so far is that we make it easier to unreserve. It's still a pain. The people who know the process probably know what I'm talking about. The only thing that we could do is to say, okay, in order to make it simpler, we have provided this overview where you can see all the production orders that are supposed to be released, get an information, do they actually have all material available, then they have to check, or do they not have all material available? And what it's doing here, it's looking into the dynamic plan. So it's checking this according to the dynamic plan. So it's not dependent on reservation. That's the important part. This works without reservation. It's just a dynamic plan. And it also means that material might actually be allocated to it might be there. Like in this case, there's actually enough there. It is just allocated to another order. And that's what it shows me. I have enough available on hand, but it has allocated some 63 pieces here that are on order that are not there yet, but another other order has allocated them on stock. So I am actually able to release this one, and with that reserve it and throw it to the warehouse. And that's really kind of the important part of that process, that you're now able to select and release the right order, the orders that you can actually do. You see something here that is not yet there in the fall release. I want to shortly talk about. I don't know how it's actually looking like, but maybe we should just try, because that's what we're working on right now. Is that the next step is that if you figure out that you actually cannot do it, let's take this one. So this one, well, there's no way I'm going to do it because there's 2 components missing. So now the next thing, I might just say, okay, I'm not releasing it, but that isn't actually update my schedule. For scheduling perspective, I'm still blocking these resources. So now the next step will obviously be to go into the Gantt chart and actually resolve that thing. I can try it. I hope it's actually showing up something sensible. This is the live actual version. Oh yeah, it actually does that. So this is a preview. That is not yet live. So you will now be able to move that. That is spring release, not yet there. So the Gantt chart will be reactivated to be able to work on that one. We'll have a couple of nice features built in there, giving you more insight on these kind of information. Like for instance, you have the materials overview again on the job level here. This job doesn't have a material dependency. Stuff like that. So that is a little bit of a preview. I think it's actually important to recognize that. we're working on this actively, and as always, we're working with the customer and partner feedback group to actually validate the small steps. If there's anybody highly interested in working with us on that, on finalizing it, just come back to me, give me your card, and I'll connect you to Johan, who's driving that one. The other thing I want to show you as the latest part of the demo is the job device terminal. And that is also very important. We get that question again. So we've decided not to continue the shop floor application that we have released for 2012. That was in the Windows App Store. The reason why we didn't continue with that is that we didn't find an obvious solution to how that can be customized for customers. So it's a great tool. It works fine unless it works exactly how it is there. If the moment you want to change it, and unfortunately that's the point in shop floor devices very, very often, you have to make your own implementation basically on that. We have now more concentrated on using the HTML5 client for that, and making a more touch-friendly interface for that. So really kind of going in also a more mobile experience on that. And this is why the job device terminal is the way to go. We know there's still a couple of gaps that we need to actively fill, and I think that's something we will need to go and address going forward. The other story, obviously, is that we have worked, and Mirza is also going to talk about that as well when we were talking about the mobile experience around the warehouse. I mean, with the warehouse in R3, we introduced a mobile experience that was limited only to warehouse operations or to production operations that have a direct relation to warehouse operations. So you could register things like a pick or a put away only if, or like a pick or a receipt of a production order or of a Kanban only if there was also a put away. You couldn't actually do it like that and say, okay, I just want to register a receipt. Why do I need to have the warehouse operation on top of that? So we actually worked on enabling more of the scenarios, and one of that is the raw material consumption without pick work. So if you need to kind of register, that is especially important if you have batch and serial numbers that you need to register. If you have to register them with the mobile device, then you can do that now in the mobile device with an own function that actually just registers the consumption. So it actually kind of does what you used to do in the pick form, but it doesn't actually need pick work to actually do that. And that's one of the really kind of one of these functionalities that we added now, where through the mobile scanner, through the warehouse scanner, you can basically do a registration of production pick that is not warehouse pick. And we also added another functionality for Lean that, for instance, you can do a Kanban empty scan through the mobile device, through the warehouse scanner. The other thing I want to mention on the Lean side, on what we're working on, is the withdrawal Kanban with warehouse work, with warehouse pick work. It's something we're going to release in the spring release. So what are we working on for spring? I already showed you a little bit the visual scheduling using the Gantt control. So that's something that's going to be back. We're going to go a little bit different than it was in AX 2012, trying to really focus on specific scenarios. As I said, right now, for instance, the scenario rescheduling because of material availability, or rescheduling because of resource resource shortage or resource breakdown, and really try to kind of make that scenario work. That means in that case we will use capabilities to show alternative resources, to kind of show them which are the alternative resources, show them in the Gantt, and then drag the job to the alternative resource. That will be the experience. And then obviously having a better scalability than we had it in 2012 in the Gantt chart. we're not claiming that this Gantt chart will be competing with some of the Gantt charts that some of the ISV partners have. They have put a lot of effort and a lot of energy into that, and these are great tools. We're making small steps. We're getting better, but we're not claiming that you can just throw away these advanced scheduling systems for that. That's not going to be the target. A second thing I want to mention here is we're working on improving the backflash costing performance. Now, backflash costing is only something that we're using in Lean, but it's actually an example of something that might affect other processes, and we're using this kind of as a first trial. There's a lot of processes in AX that are limited in scalability because they're tying back to one ledger journal. I mean, if you take any inventory journal, it's actually true for that. It creates one ledger journal, and because it creates a ledger journal, the technology so far has been that the ledger journal is built up in a temp table and then it's posted. The consequences of that is that it has to be one database transaction. So the larger your journals, the larger the database transaction. And in the case of backflash costing, we had a customer that actually had like 2,000 Kanbans on one production flow daily. That just simply doesn't scale anymore. We can't just do the backflash costing for that anymore. And we will probably see other scenarios like that. So we actually have worked on a solution that allows us to separate the update on the inventory side in smaller portions, basically by item. Commit that, build up a ledger journal, and commit the ledger journal at the end. If anybody of you has another scenario that has the same problem, please report it back to me. If you have, because we need data for that. We now have a solution how to do that, but we're not going to kind of just change everything. But if anybody has a relevant scenario on that, and I mean the reason why this is really also important is that we're moving to the cloud. We need to get more scalability. We need to get better in these kind of things. One of the good things about that is that with a little bit more than 60 users that we have live on AX7 today, we're monitoring their telemetry, and we were actually able to identify already now through telemetry that there's a couple of cases. One actually that popped up recently was an inventory counting scenario where people were importing inventory counted journals from, I don't know where it was coming from. It's probably a retail scenario where from multiple stores inventory counting journals were imported and then run in parallel. And that was actually already a problem. So things like that would be interesting to work on, just to let you know that we have that we're working on finding scalability solutions for this kind of problem. And then a never-ending and kind of an always ongoing thread that we have, and this especially Roxana and me, we do continuous improvements in master planning, basically customer and case-driven, we can say. One of the things that have been very, very prominent in the last half year is everything around safety stock. There's a lot of things around safety stock planning that didn't work smoothly, and we have to done a couple of improvements in that area. And then also around the CTP process, basically how demand forecast is actually overruled when you get actual demand in. So this is what's going on in the manufacturing area. With that we close the manufacturing part, and I'll hand it over to Anders. Hey, thank you.